Sable Island. It's a remote, almost mythical landscape in the Northwest Atlantic, famous for its wild horses. It's also home to the world's largest breeding colony of gray seals. And every winter, tens of thousands of female seals arrive here to give birth.
It is a totally unique island. There is nothing else like this in the world. It's very special.
Over the next 12 months, a team of scientists will explore every inch of the island. As they study these amazing animals and their young.
We have a great team, and they just are so invested in this program and this research.
Using a host of scientific technologies, from probes and satellite tags.
Do you want to put the camera on her?
To underwater cameras.
It's so exciting to see what these animals are doing.
To reveal the extraordinary lives of one of the ocean's most curious and magical creatures. In the icy depths of the Atlantic, pregnant gray seals are gathering. Sleek, aquadynamic, and incredibly fast in the water. For months, they've spent most of their time at sea, foraging for food and preparing for what's ahead. By December, they're slowly coming ashore to spend 3 challenging weeks on Sable Island, where they'll give birth, nurse their pups, and mate once again. And they'll do it with lots of company. No one knows for sure why so many gray seals breed here. It may be a case of safety in numbers, but they're gregarious animals, so they seem to enjoy the companionship. Unless another seal gets a little too close, which is often the case with the males. Set apart by their larger size and even bigger noses, the males arrive on Sable alongside the females. And their main goal is finding a mate. This male looks as if he's lounging around, but he's actually guarding his chosen female. And the longer he stands guard, the better his chances of mating with her when she weans her pup. Meanwhile, the females stay focused on the job at hand, finding a place to give birth. Some find a spot on the shore, but as the beach gets more crowded, others head further inland. And as the seals settle in, the scientists who study them are also on their way to Sable. Lead scientist Nell Denhire flies into this island every December.
It's the largest gray seal breeding colony in the world, and because they haul out predictably here on Sable Island, we're able to have a research program that lets us look at their role in the ecosystem, better understand the reproductive ecology, monitor the population. It's just a tremendous opportunity to do research. There's a tremendous amount of organization that goes into these trips because we have to get all the people here and all the supplies. So it's a lot of advanced planning and anticipating the troubles you're going to face.
And trouble often comes in the form of bad weather. So while conditions are good, marine biologist Damien Lidgard hits the beach to witness an amazing spectacle. Some of the females are in labor, a process that can last for days. And this one is about to give birth. This new mom likely bred for the first time at around age 6. And she'll continue to birth a single pup almost every year for the rest of her life, which can last up to 40 years. She'll spend the next 18 days on land with no food, nursing her hungry little pup. So she could lose up to 4 kilos of weight every single day. Damien has been observing and photographing these incredibly resilient animals for more than 20 years.
When these animals arrive on the island, they arrive with high stress levels.
The female has to spend her year accumulating sufficient resources to nourish the developing fetus. And then she has to find a location that is suitable for giving birth. And then once she's given birth, she has to protect that pup.
Getting free of the birth sac is the first big challenge. The next step is connecting with mom. The pair bonds through smell and the pup's unique call, which mom uses to identify her offspring. The call also signals that it's time to eat. Like all newborns, this little guy weighs in at around 16 kilos. And with regular servings of its mom's fat-rich milk, it should triple its weight in just 3 weeks. Between now and January, thousands of mothers will continue to arrive, and as many as 80,000 pups will be born. It's a huge number of animals to keep track of on an island that's 42 kilometers long. But Nell and her team are mapping out a plan to do just that.
I can start with that map. That'll keep me busy.
Yeah. So Shelley is going to start tagging east before lunch.
Yeah. And we're gonna
We're just going to go west.
this way.
In fact, scientists have been marking and counting seals here for decades.
We've marked a little over 8,000 gray seals since the 60s, and the core work we do today is to go out and find those animals in these colonies. Yesterday, we probably looked at 40 to 60,000 gray seals. It's an incredible opportunity to be able to identify individual seals where you know what year the animal was born, the year it first came back to have a pup, how many years it's come back to have a pup.
But counting the marked seals isn't the only way the team estimates population size and survival rates. Every 5 years, they do an aerial survey, taking photos of the long, narrow island, then painstakingly counting the number of new pups. And what they've learned is astonishing. Unlike many other animal populations that are now in decline, the gray seal population has been booming.
I've only been coming here since 2006. The gray seal colony has doubled in that time. It's amazing.
In fact, the population has increased from just 1,300 seals in the 1960s to more than 380,000 today. And it's just beginning to level off. So what's changed between now and then? And why are so many more seals surviving? One reason for their success may be linked to their eating habits.
Gray seals are what we call a generalist predator. They eat a lot of different types of fish. And there has been some large-scale change in the fish community in the Northwest Atlantic, which has happened mostly because of our activities in commercial fishing, but also because of climate change. So in the face of these large-scale changes in the fish community, gray seals have been doing just fine.
But while the seals may have enough food, no one knows for sure exactly what they eat. Do they only feed on the fish we like to eat? And what impact are thousands of seals having on fish populations? Tough questions to answer, given that seals can travel hundreds of kilometers and dive down to 300 meters. So the scientists came up with an ingenious plan to spy on the seals' foraging behavior.
So I think it's important to observe animals, and the only way we can do that underwater is through the attachment of a video camera.
3 months ago, the team attached a one-of-a-kind high-tech video camera to a special seal named Emma. Emma's been tracked by the scientists for more than 30 years, and almost every winter she's returned here to give birth. So they're confident she'll be back.
It is so hard to understand what these guys do at sea. They come to the surface, we put satellite tags on them, we can see where they are, we can see how little or much they moved while they were in the open ocean. We use that as sort of an indication of where they might be foraging, but we don't know what they're doing underwater and we don't know what they consume. So these cameras are a great opportunity to validate what we think from the movement patterns might be foraging areas, and to find out what these animals are eating when they're at sea. I'm hoping we get good video. It's exciting. We've been trying hard to make it happen, so we're on the edge of our seat.
If she does return with the camera, it could be a scientific first, showing us exactly how and what the seals eat. But there's no guarantee the camera survived 3 months at sea. Damien is now waiting for Emma's return to find out. In the meantime, the camera's not the only thing at risk. The seal pups are under constant threat.
The first year of life is, if you like, the most treacherous period for these pups. First of all, they have to survive being in the breeding colony, exposed to potential attacks from other individuals, females and males.
This mother will do everything she can to nurture and protect her pup. But if it wanders off and gets too close to another mom, it could get hurt.
So the females are very protective. They don't like seals to get too close to their pup. When you approach a female, she will start vocalizing at you and approach you and tell you to back off.
And if a strange pup doesn't back off, the female will attack.
If the pup gets bitten, those wounds can become infected and it can increase the likelihood of the pup dying.
Other females aren't the only threat. Turns out a mother's age and personality can also make or break a pup's chances. A founding member of the research program, Don Bowen's been studying gray seals longer than anyone else on the team. And what he's discovered about young moms is pretty remarkable.
And it turns out that when you're a young female, you tend to be more timid. And associated with that timid personality, their pups tend to be about 2 kilograms lighter. There seems to be an interaction between personality and reproductive performance, particularly for young females. Once a female gets probably 10 years old, then that disappears.
So having an older, more aggressive mother gives a pup a significant advantage, particularly when there's a big male demanding his mom's attention.
There's comedy out there, right? It can be comical. These big adult males, they roll. We don't know why they do it, but rather than moving along on their bellies using their foreflippers, they roll. I just kind of find that's funny, you know?
But males can also be incredibly violent, especially when they're fighting over a female. And pups can sometimes get hurt. But getting rolled on by a 300-kilogram male isn't the only threat. Right now, there's a winter storm coming in, which means icy gale force winds and violent seas that can last for days. While blowing sand and frigid temperatures drive the scientists back to camp, the seal pups seem to manage just fine. They can withstand just about any weather. What they can't risk is getting separated from their mothers, which often happens during a violent storm. Pups born close to the water are easily swept out to sea by the storm surge. And even if they make it back to the beach, they may be a long way away from Mom. One pup lucks out and is reunited with its mother. Another isn't as lucky. And if it doesn't find Mom and nurse soon, things won't go well for this vulnerable little animal. Because the reality is that 10 out of every 100 pups born here won't make it off the island.
It kind of flourishes the first time you realize that part of a breeding colony is there's a lot of mortality. There's a lot of new life, but the early stages are risky stages, so there's also a lot of pups that don't make it off the island. And there are adults also that don't make it off the island, so you see a lot of death at a breeding colony. It wasn't something I was expecting at all.
But there are thousands of pups and adults that do thrive. And the team's hoping that Emma, the seal with a video camera, is among them.
Hey, Deb, have you heard anything about Emma, over?
I'm going about to check right now.
All right then, well, we'll be standing by.
One of our colleagues at the West End sighted a seal with a satellite tag on its head. So because there are no other tagged animals out there, it's highly likely that Emma was sighted yesterday.
So Damien heads out to investigate. But when he gets to Emma's location, what he discovers is devastating.
It's hard to say conclusively from this distance what's happened, but it looks like the netting has torn and released the camera. It doesn't stop the research, it just is a disappointment, you know.
But Damien won't give up on the camera experiment. And besides, there's still lots of work to do. Things are changing on the beach. Some of the pups have stopped nursing and started to lose their baby fur. Soon, the next big challenge will begin as they forge a life away from their mothers and build the strength they need to tackle the sea. Up on the dunes, a couple of weaned pups are nestled in the sand. No longer nursing, the pups are now called weaners. An apt name, given that they don't just look like roly-poly sausages. They can behave a bit like a sausage as well. This one gives the climb another try, because right now, the dunes are the safest place to be. Down on the beach, the females are thin and hungry and ready to mate, which means that the males guarding them are now under siege.
So these males have to stay with a female, and he has to defend that female during that period to ensure that his sperm are going to be the ones that sire her offspring.
This big male likely reached sexual maturity at age 7. Then he'd have looked like this guy, a little too small to challenge an older male.
Some males won't even enter into a competition. Right? They're just testing it, right? Like an inexperienced male, they just kind of come in and see, well, you know, I'll give it a shot. And then, you know, the male notices him and he'll just like bugger off.
But if a challenger doesn't back off, fighting isn't the only way to win a female. Sometimes, all it takes is a hissing match.
They have this open mouth threat. And the lower that open mouth threat, the more competitive is the male. So they're kind of using that to judge each other. That could be enough, that the male will decide, you know, I'm not going to compete.
And while the guys compete, the female doesn't just lie back and watch. Sometimes she pits the males against each other and then waits to see who wins.
So she's kind of set up a competition. If you want to mate with me, I need to see you in action, right? I need to see you competing with other males and win. And of course, if it doesn't win, then this male is gone. It's been kicked out, and this better male, this more successful male, will then mate with her.
But privacy is tough to come by. So when another male tries to push his way in, the wrestling match starts all over again. And more often than not, the winning male is the one that launches a rear attack.
So what they do not want to happen is for the hind flippers to get damaged. Because the hind flippers, of course, are how they get their food. It's their propulsion in the water, the speed that is required to be able to catch prey.
Because they're critical to survival, when the back flippers are attacked, the victim beats a retreat. But what about the males who are still too young and too small to fight? Well, if strength doesn't work, they can always try stealth.
One tactic they use is they go to the shoreline and they wait for a female to leave the colony. So when the female has finished raising her offspring, she will gradually make her way out to sea. And when males see a single female heading towards the sea, particularly one that is depleted, they do a beeline for her.
And they move pretty fast. Using their flippers like ski poles, they can actually vault past a human in a 100-meter dash. But no matter how fast they run, their chances of siring an offspring are pretty slim. Assuming they even manage to catch a female. Because once she's in the water, she's gone. A few days later, and breeding season is almost over. Many of the males head to the tip of the island to lick their wounds and rest, including this rare albino. Most of the adult females have left the island, leaving the weaners to fend for themselves. Once as fat as barrels, they're now slimming down to get ready for a life at sea.
They move up these dune cliffs and they hang out there for about 2 to 4 weeks, just learning about their environment. Some of them move around quite a lot, and some of them don't move around so much.
But what they all seem to enjoy is digging in the sand.
So you see pups doing that, particularly weaners. They drive their noses through the sand. They're using their foreflippers to move sand around. And then you see it in the females too. The females are also doing it. So it looks like they're smelling the ground.
No one knows for sure why the seals nuzzle the ground like this, but some scientists suspect it may be linked to the way they forage at sea. And it's astonishing how fast these little animals adapt to life in the water.
They're just beautiful, unique animals. I find them so amazing. Their moms give birth, 17 days later they're set free, and somehow they figure out that they don't live on land and that they need to go to sea and feed, and I think that's kind of an amazing thing if you think about it. They do it individually. I mean, you find them in the ponds inland or in flooded areas. You'll find pups in there sort of practicing and sticking their nose under the water and blowing bubbles or trying to figure out how to hold their breath. You know, you see these pups that are born in the middle of the island somewhere, and they do figure out they're supposed to be in the ocean swimming around. And they go down to the beach, and then a wave hits them, and they freak out, and they run right back up the beach again. Kind of remind you of puppies. They have that sort of behavior. Yeah, if you put pups together in a pen, they will spread out very evenly so no one's touching. They seem to like each other's company, but not too close.
At some point, there's a physiological switch which causes their behavior to change, and they will start to head down back onto the beach and move out towards the sea.
Once in the water, the youngsters are on their own, relying on instinct to find the food they now desperately need. Assuming they make it past the sharks that patrol the coast just off Sable. Predators that may be causing some very unusual injuries. Shark specialist Warren Joyce has been coming to Sable for more than a decade. And he's seen weaners with these strange corkscrew wounds every year.
We typically see, I don't know, maybe 100 or so, or a couple hundred of these seals that have been attacked or have this injury. It was thought that the seals, when they enter the water, they might encounter Greenland sharks. The shark would take a bite, the seal does a natural corkscrew backwards, and essentially causes this wound.
But sharks aren't the only suspects.
There's a number of offshore rigs working here, and there's support boats. These boats have positioning thrusters, and maybe if the seal again is curious and goes in, the thruster comes on and causes this wound. There is a camp that also believes it might be the adult male gray seals inflicting this, and there was some evidence, I believe, from over in Europe. We have not seen that here in particular. So again, we're not sure. We don't have any definitive proof of that. So it's still a mystery.
Equally puzzling is where the surviving weaners go once they're in the water. Thanks to the use of satellite tags, the team can now predict where the seals go. When the breeding season ends, the males can travel hundreds of kilometers away from Sable, while the females tend to stay closer to the island and the offshore sandbanks. But the inexperienced weaners seem to meander a lot and actually travel longer distances than the adults. No one knows why they wander like this. They may simply be exploring and learning as they go. Seals are notoriously curious creatures, and they're ideally suited for life at sea. gray seals can stay underwater for up to 16 minutes, thanks to a protein that stores oxygen in their muscles. And while their large, moist eyes don't work that well on land, underwater, their size and shape allows the seals to see clearly, even in the murkiest water. But it's their sensitive whiskers and ears that are critical for hunting. These whiskers can sense even the smallest vibrations of prey, and their ears are so highly tuned that even a blind seal can find food. To do that, they need to be incredibly fast, zooming through the water at speeds up to 32 kilometers an hour. But despite these remarkable adaptations, fewer juveniles are now surviving their first years at sea, which comes as no surprise to lead scientist Nell Denhire.
That's exactly as we would expect for a predator that's reaching its maximum number. So as the population grows, the young animals are actually competing with the adults to get food. And the adults are probably better at accessing the resources, so the mortality is being pushed to the juveniles.
In fact, since the 1990s, yearly population growth has dropped by more than half. And with this year's survey now complete, Nell and the team are heading back to the mainland. It's been a tough trip for Damien, given the loss of the underwater seal camera.
There was a lot of effort to deploy these cameras. They're expensive. Each time we fail in some way, we have to wait a year to do it again. I'm still determined to come back here and try again.
It's now October, and for the past 9 months, the Sable Island horses have had the beaches pretty much to themselves. While groups of gray seals return regularly, a lot of their time is spent at sea, foraging for food. But the scientists still don't fully understand how they forage, or the impact they are having on fish stocks. Which is why scientist Damien Lidgard is back on the island armed with 2 underwater cameras. Other attempts failed, so he is anxious to test out the new gear.
This is the camera, a new design, so lighter, a little smaller footprint, more hydrodynamic. Sitting here, I feel rather apprehensive about the whole thing, but we'll only know if we try.
While Damien stresses about the cameras, a new team member, Tiffin Geniard-Dudot, prepares her gear. She's about to transform a seal into a scientific assistant.
These are tags that are made especially for seals. We put them on the head of the animals, and when they go at sea, they basically sample the environment that they go through when they dive.
But first, they need to capture a male seal while keeping it safe. It's a bit like cutting a wild horse from a herd. Sometimes you catch one, and sometimes you don't.
Okay.
214, 214.
Once calm, the seal is weighed and measured. Then the team attaches the water monitoring tag. The tag is fastened to netting that will stay on until the spring, when the animal molts. Both are set in place with a fast-drying epoxy glue. They choose males because their behavior makes them better suited for the job.
Males tend to forage further away, come back for the breeding season, but then go further away again. They go everywhere, they dive constantly, they forage up to the bottom of the ocean, and all the while they do that, they basically collect oceanographic information.
And the information they collect on water temperature and salt content is vitally important because it's used to assess the impact of climate change on the ocean.
He's gone.
He's gone.
He's doing his job.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes. Now we have to do our job.
And the work he does will be added to more than 500,000 water profiles collected by marine mammals. But that's not the only way the seals are helping us to better understand their watery environment. Today, Damien is getting ready to deploy his underwater seal cameras. If the experiment works, the cameras could help to answer a critical question. What impact are the gray seals having on fish populations?
It's an important question that people want to know, right? Yes, seals do eat fish, but they're not necessarily eating the fish that we're interested in. And so the question is, how much are they actually consuming? And where are they doing that? So the video cameras, we're hoping, will allow us to be able to document that behavior. The process of capturing the seal is nerve-wracking. Once we've selected an animal, you just have to commit to taking a net and launching yourself onto the animal. And once you're on the animal, the seal calms right down.
The captured seal is called Kate, and the scientists are pretty certain she'll be back.
She's a special lady. She's had a pup in each of the last 3 years, so she's a good bet to put instruments on.
Kate's head is kitted out with a satellite tag, used to follow her route at sea and locate her when she's back on land. But the most important piece of gear is the camera itself, a complex computer complete with lights that only turn on at night when the seal dives to a specific depth. And once it's on, Kate is ready to go.
Kate 375, camera number 1 of 2.
But capturing the second seal will have to wait. A storm is coming in, and the team needs to do some essential repairs before it rains. The camp fence is in pretty bad shape, because it isn't just a perch for more than 300 visiting bird species. It's a scratching post for the wild horses. There are more than 500 horses on Sable Island, and amazingly, their survival may be directly linked to their maritime companions. In fact, some scientists suspect that more horses are now surviving thanks to the gray seals, whose waste fertilizes the grass the horses feed on. But while their food source is pretty obvious, it's not as easy to figure out what a seal eats. So as soon as the rain passes,
Okay, camera's good.
the team kits out the next camera assistant, a 30-year-old female named Fiona. And with the camera in place, Fiona is ready to do her job. Now the really nerve-wracking period begins. Waiting 6 long weeks to see if Fiona, Kate, and their cameras return to Sable Island.
I will see in January as to whether or not they work.
It's once again breeding season on Sable Island, when thousands of seals return to give birth. Damien is also back, anxious to see if his underwater cameras are still attached to 2 female seals, Fiona and Kate. But there's just one problem. Fiona's satellite tag isn't working, so Damien has to search for her. A few hours later, he hits the jackpot.
I was just driving down to East Light, looked over to my right, and Fiona was right there in a group of animals.
Not only is she on the beach, the camera's still attached, and she's just given birth. Fiona needs time to bond with her newborn pup, so Damien has to wait to retrieve the camera. Now he needs to find the other female, Kate. Luckily, her GPS tag is still working, so he locates her pretty fast. And just like Fiona, Kate's got company.
So she's looking great. My pup is probably a week old, maybe a little bit older. All the instruments look well attached. Everything looks great. I've found Kate. She is quite close to BIO entrance on North Beach.
Kate and her pup have had lots of time to bond, so he calls out the team to retrieve the camera.
Weigh the pup, tag the pup, sex the pup, and then you can kind of help us with the female. Okay.
On a crowded beach, the females move in to protect their pups, so the team needs to be vigilant in case of an attack.
Okay, tripod scale, winch.
Kate's pup is also closely watched to make sure it doesn't wander away. Then it's time to remove the real prize, Kate's camera.
So hopefully it will communicate with the computer and download the footage. Not bad for being at sea for 6 weeks.
But before he can download all the footage, Damien needs to retrieve Fiona's camera.
Well, this was my last attempt. Like, if this didn't work, then you have to start to question, is this the right approach? So I'm glad that this time it did work.
Camera free? Good job.
Okay, everybody move out the way.
After previous failures, successfully retrieving 2 cameras is a huge victory for Damien and the team. And when he downloads hours of video footage, what it reveals is remarkable. For years, scientists have observed gray seals using their noses and flippers to dig in the sand, but no one could fully explain why they did it. Now, thanks to the cameras, Damien has confirmed one of the reasons behind the behavior. And New Year's Eve is the big reveal.
So this is one of the videos from Fiona's seal camera. She's now on the seabed, what we think is a seabed, and she's sticking her snout into the substrate, but she's definitely engaged in some kind of foraging behavior.
That is cool.
And then about 5 minutes later, she's back at the surface, and that's repeated for several hours.
Kate's camera shows exactly the same behavior.
See, it's exciting, isn't it? It's so exciting.
Very cool.
To be able to see what these animals are doing.
And what they're doing isn't quite what Damien expected.
When they dive down, they're not chasing after schools of fish or individual fish. They're going down to the bottom, and it looks like they are either sticking their noses into the mud, into the sand, and moving the sand around, or they're using the flippers. So they're probably doing that to be able to search for food. So we know that seals eat sand lance. This is where sand lance live.
In fact, the tiny fish called sand lance spend a lot of time burrowed in the sand and mud on the ocean floor. They emerge to feed and spawn.
And we have seen sand lance in the video, like just a glimpse of one just quickly swimming away. And you can see the head of the female is moving very quickly down or side to side, which would suggest that it's trying to get something, trying to grab onto something. So they're not foraging in the middle of the water column. They're not swimming fast along the bottom. They're kind of rummaging like pigs through the sand, searching for food.
But are the seals only eating sand lance? And do males and females eat the same things? Damien is already making plans to find out.
With the footage that we now have, we can help those cameras evolve much further. We can now look at these cameras and say, well, you know, what would be better would be stronger lights, or it'd be better if we recorded at all hours of the day doing. We're just beginning to see their world.
And whether the seals are diving into the ocean depths or gathering to give birth, the researchers will be there as they continue to explore the amazing world of the gray seals on Sable Island.